Hi, I'm Eric, and welcome to another edition of Expat News for the week of January 12th. This week, I'm coming to you from the mountains above Southern California. I'm up at 7,000 feet in the clear air so I can breathe because I'm coming from the Los Angeles area and I'm only 30 miles from where these fires are. And the air quality is absolutely terrible. But talk about a contrast. Take a look at what my backyard looked like just a couple of days ago. You know, it's hard to believe that the fires are burning only 2.5 hours away from where I am here. And I have to tell you, I needed to get out of the smoke. It was so bad where I live, approximately 30 miles across the bay, the Santa Monica Bay, basically on the other side, directly across from Pacific Palisades. So when I look at the ocean from the bluffs in my area, and I'm looking across past LAX towards Malibu and Pacific Palisades, I see these huge plumes of smoke. And what's happening is we have this just very rare event, especially in January of all times. So can't recall there being fires like this in January ever before. But what's happened is it really hasn't rained here in Southern California since April. So we have a drought condition. Now, the last 2 years here, it was actually very high on precipitation and kind of a colder, wetter winter. So we kind of forgot about all the years prior to that where California was in a drought. We typically only get 12 to 15 inches of rain in an entire year, a typical year in Southern California. And so far, since April, it really hasn't had any significant rainfall at all. So those dry conditions make it a bit of a problem for us. Then we have this event called the Santa Ana winds. And what they are, Santa Ana means kind of like double winds, is because they blow warm or hot from the desert area to the sea. And what I can kind of see from my area is since this warm air is being pushed out towards the ocean, all of the smoke from the fires from Pacific Palisades, which is now burning towards the Encino area. So these Santa Ana winds, they blow out from the desert and they pick pretty much the passes, right? They're looking for canyons, mountains. It's not so much like the open areas. We do get the Santa Ana wind conditions across the open areas, but they accelerate when they go through canyons. And so when you get into more hills and mountainous areas, that's typically where we have a problem with Santa Ana wind conditions. And if it's dry, which it is from a humidity standpoint. So we typically run about 50% humidity along the coast here in Southern California, or in the greater LA area, let's say. And during these, what we call red flag wind events, these Santa Ana conditions, which are dry, because of these winds being pushed from the desert to the sea, the humidity drops to about 10 to 12 to 15%. The closer you are to the ocean, usually the higher the humidity. So when we're used to 50% humidity, the fire danger is not a real big problem. But when the humidity drops down to 10, 12%, that really puts us in a difficult position. And then one of the things that's happened with these fires here that I've been watching, when it first started, we had extreme Santa Ana wind conditions. So typically a strong wind event here is maybe 40-mile-an-hour winds, 50-mile gusts, something like that. Plenty strong to cause problems, blows down, limbs, some trees, makes a mess of the place. But in this case, when this Santa Ana wind condition went into effect, in certain places near the mountains and the areas around Pacific Palisades, which is just kind of next to Malibu up in the hills, the gusts were hitting us up to as high as 100 miles per hour. The problem with that is you have this perfect recipe, which doesn't happen very often, but you've got this low humidity, you have drought conditions, so the vegetation, brush and trees are dry. Now you've got this wind event, and the wind event's so high as far as the velocity of the miles per hour, right? If it's 80 to 100 mile gusts, you can't get aircraft in the air. So when the fire starts, it just starts jumping from place to place. It can jump from tree to tree, shrub to shrub, whatever. It moves quickly. You can't outrun it. And the wind's just pushing those embers. It's the embers from the fire burning, being pushed forward, that catches houses on fire and everything else. So we've had a very unique time here, and the air quality is absolutely horrible over the LA area. And that's why I decided to go up to the mountains to make this week's show. So maybe more than you ever wanted to know, I'm sure you're getting a lot of news footage about what's going on. The problem is we're like 4 or 5 days into it, and we still have red flag Santa Ana wind conditions for the next couple of days. And it's just fueling it. And it's just a very dangerous, situation. What I wanted to show you here was a clip that there's a lot of talk about the fire chief and Bass, the mayor of LA, and how could they not be prepared. And I want to show you this clip because I think it's an interesting conversation. So let's take a look.
To help, I discovered no water.
Well, there's no water. Steve, there's no water.
Was the water turned off recently, or is it just no pressure?
There's no water at all up here.
So what's happening here is that the water pressure at the hydrants and also at the homes, because it's being tapped into from so many different places to fight the fire, there's no water pressure to even protect your own home. Very scary circumstances, to say the least. And the other thing that's happening is they're saying there's somewhere around 20% of the fire hydrants in this area that are not working. Well, it may be that there is water access to those hydrants, but the problem is, let's see, how would I explain this? It's kind of like if you turn on all of your faucets at once in your house. Turn on your shower, turn on your tub, every faucet that you have in your home, turn it on. And what happens? It reduces the water flow. Well, that's what's happening here. The water's being diverted. Some of these fire hydrants aren't working at all, and that's a problem. But what I'm trying to say is some of the fire hydrants are pressurized, but the pressure is so low that it's not pushing the water up into the hydrant. And on most of those hydrants, the water's got to be pumped into it at some degree. And so if the electrical power is affected, that affects the pump stations that would pump the water into the hydrants. So I'm sure there's some combination of factors. There's supposed to be an investigation by the Governor Newsom here. And don't get me started on him. But anyway, he's going to investigate it and find out why. But there is some practical physics that's going on here, that there's too many faucets turned on at the same time. There's not enough pressure, even if there's access for water in the hydrant, for the pressure to come up and come out. And so they need to look at this, and they need to protect the power supply for the pumps that pump the water to the hydrants. Look, I'm no expert, but been watching a lot of the news trying to figure out what's going on. And I live in an area that also is at a high risk fire danger. And so we have a lot of hills and shrubs and trees. We just happen to be on the other side of the Santa Monica Bay, the ocean area, from the Pacific Palisades. And certainly could happen in our area, so we're keeping watch. But it's been tragic, and my heart goes out to all those people that have lost their homes. I can't imagine. So continue to give your thoughts and prayers for those folks, all right? I want to go on into the highlights for this week, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's start off this week's edition with some of the news highlights, what's kind of happening around the Philippines with both expats and expat bloggers. I'm going to be referring back and forth to my screen here. This is kind of a new format that I'm trying to see what you guys think. And when you get a chance, if you could let me know in the comments, that would be great. Kind of a split screen of sorts instead of me just putting together clips. I'm going to narrate some of this along the way. So one of the first things I want to look at is the exchange rate. So I put together here a 1-year chart, and we're at 58.8 pesos to the dollar. And you can kind of see the fluctuation throughout the last year. And the exchange rate is in the favor of our side, which would be more pesos to the dollar. And that actually is up 4.5% for the year. You know, when it was first put together, when they equalized the peso to the US dollar, it was actually at a ratio of just 2-to-1. And that was part of when the Spanish left and the Americans kind of got involved. That was called the American colonial period. That started in 1898, and then some point after that time, we kind of equalized our currency against their Philippine peso. It was later into the future, but it did start at 2 pesos to $1, and now we're at 58. Better for us expats that go over there, people that like to travel there. So it all goes further. But one of the other things I wanted to show you was how it's kind of changed over the last 10 years. And I think that this next chart that you're going to see here, it's kind of interesting to see the difference, because it really has moved in the last 10 years, making things more affordable for foreigners traveling there. Not so good if you're a Filipino. You're actually getting less for $1. We get more if we're coming from the US, etc. So in this 10-year chart here that I'm looking at, you can see that there's a growth rate over the last 10 years of 31.6%. So it really has moved quite a bit over the last 10 years, and it continues to go in our favor. Now, one of the things that's important about this that I want you to think about, because there's actually a unique kind of set of circumstances that's happening here. And I think by having the peso go further, and then some economic variables that are happening in Manila in particular, in BGC and Makati, right? So that is the huge condo market. And it's been a hot market internationally for a while. And basically what's gone on is the building has been at an accelerated rate, and the values of the condos, if you were to purchase them there, has been going up significantly, sometimes 20% or more per year the last few years. What's happening is we have this oversupply on the condos. And this is probably going to be, it's both a combination of the rental and the purchase market. But I want to handle those two topics separately. I feel very comfortable about renting right now in BGC and Makati. I don't feel so comfortable about buying yet. I believe the prices are going to go down significantly. And here's why. We have this kind of external factor, among other things, going on. And that is the POGOs. That's those gaming operations that the Philippine government has been basically clamping down on and sending a lot of the foreigners back to their countries, in particular China. And because of that, a lot of those people that had those companies, they were based in the Manila area, and they were making a lot of money, so they were staying in the nice condos in BGC and Makati and some of the other surrounding areas. Because of that, there's a 34-month supply of condos, meaning that the current demand of people renting a condo, it'll take 34 months for that supply and demand to match. Simply put, condo prices for renting are dropping significantly, and they will also on the purchase side. And because BGC, in particular in the Makati area, is considered a very international market, a lot of international investment. I mean, obviously the average Filipino can't afford a high-end condo. Some of these condos are around $500,000 US. To me, it feels like it's an overinflated price of the properties there. So the rents actually don't quite match the high-end value of some of the condos. It's interesting. So all that to say, I think there's a unique opportunity for you to be able to rent right now. I believe rent prices are going to continue to drop until this 3-year supply is made back up. So from what I'm hearing, you can get about a 20 to 30% price reduction in the rent compared to a year ago. And I don't think it's over. I think this is going to go on for some time. It will be temporary. At some point, enough people will come in and rent the condos there, whether they're Filipinos or foreigners, and the supply will be used up. And if the projections are correct, it'll take 3 years to do that. So I just want you to be aware of that. Now, here's the second thing I want you to look at. This is going to be about the purchase part of the market on condos in the BGC Makati area. We have this expert here. He's going to talk about the different phases in real estate. This principle applies no matter what the country. So Listen very carefully, and then we'll kind of talk it through. All right, here we go.
We're undergoing a what you call a stages in the real
Mhm.
estate cycle, where as we know, in universal terms, we have what you call, we first undergo what you call a recovery stage. After the recovery, we now undergo a expansion stage where people buy a lot of properties, and then from the expansion stage comes uh, the hyper supply. I call it hyper, not oversupply. The global term is
Hyper-supply.
called hyper supply,
Okay.
wherein the inventory of the developers versus the number of unit owners who wants to sell their property in the market happens to collide to each other at
Yeah.
that hyper supply point. And then suddenly, after a few months, then it goes to a recession.
Mhm.
But don't forget, after the recession comes another recovery stage. So it's
Okay.
really a cycle. So once you understand, once you have the right knowledge about real estate, and it's like gravity, when it goes down, it goes up. So basically, things will be okay over the next few years, because remember, we just recovered from the pandemic,
Right.
and and of course, with the things that are happening right now, a lot of foreigners are going out because they're pulling out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's, for me, in my opinion, and based on my experience, these things that are happening are only temporary, and it doesn't happen on a general scale.
It's interesting what the expert said there. And this is true in most major real estate markets. Let's say LA, New York in particular, London, Paris, and even Manila. I'm going to kind of throw that into the mix there. The more expensive the market, the bigger this trend is. And because I'm born and raised in Southern California, our housing prices over the last 10 years have doubled, which is just craziness. I mean, you can't buy back your own house now, But these phases apply. They're the same, right? So basically, if you're coming from a recovery stage, it starts there. So the market's recovering, the prices are coming down, and they're equalizing to the supply. And once that price gets to the correct place, whether it's price per square foot or per square meter, however you want to do that, and it then catches up to itself, and all of a sudden you start getting appreciation. And that's the phase of expansion. And then the expansion continues to go until the prices become overinflated, like Southern California, like BGC. And then what happens is there's an oversupply. Now, what the expert's talking about is hypersupply, and that just means that there's this collision of the oversupply of the condos, and then the owners going, I can't sell this for what I bought it. I need to get rid of it. And so all of a sudden they're trying to sell properties. They might be institutional investors, they might be individuals, but that's kind of the hypersupply stage. So then basically the prices drop, and then the prices drop enough that it ends up back in some type of a recovery stage. So it cycles, right? So recovery, expansion, oversupply, hypersupply in this case, and then it begins to recover and then goes through these cycles. Now, I don't know what the cycle is in Manila, but in Southern California and our home prices, the cycles used to be pretty accurately to about 8 or 9 years that this cycle would happen from the low point in the market to the high point and then it correcting again. And right now in Southern California, we're like in 12 to 14 years. In fact, the peak of the previous market was spring of 2008. And so we're talking about March 2008. That was the previous high at the absolute point of expansion before we hit oversupply and the prices started to come down. Then the prices dropped here 2009, financial crisis, if you remember that. 2010, 2011, was somewhere in there was the low point. It's hard to hit the actual bottom of the market, but somewhere in there, it's kind of by definitely 2012, it was there. And then prices started to go up. Well, we're now 2025. So let's just use 2012 to make the math easy. Let's say that was the low. Well, it's been 13 years. The cycles here typically are 8 years, sometimes 10. Well, we're way overdue for a correction. I do think it's coming. Same type of thing of what's happening in BGC and Makati. So it's just interesting to me that these cycles in major markets, they all do the same thing and repeat. All right, so I thought you might find that kind of interesting. Let's move on. Now we have some travel updates as part of our highlight section here, which is the front end of our expat news each week. where I try to give you the highlights that are impacting expats and expat bloggers in the Philippines. So let's see what's going on with travel, because there's a lot of changes. Let's see what this expert, Jennifer Terry, has to say.
Another major update on eTravel is the integration of the Bureau of Customs baggage and currency declaration form, so we don't have to fill out or complete this customs form. Remember this form? They hand this out during the flight or upon arrival. So no need for that. It's already integrated on eTravel. And speaking of customs, what do you need to declare anyway? Well, generally you need to declare if you're carrying too much money. If you have more than 50,000 pesos in cash or checks, if you have more than 10,000 US dollars in cash and in check, if you have a debit card, credit card, no need to declare.
So let's just pause this for a minute, because I want to make sure we're clear what she's saying. So we're looking at the screen here where it says, if you're bringing into the country either 50,000 pesos or $10,000 in US currency, then you're going to have to declare it. What we're not saying is that 50,000 pesos equals $10,000. That's not the case. So remember we talked before exchange rates at 58. So simply just 58 times 10,000, that'd be 580,000 pesos. So this is an either or situation or an and. In other words, if you happen to have less than $10,000 US with you, you don't have to declare it. And if you do have more than 10,000, I'd like to know what you do, what you're going to do with it. I don't know if that's safe to be walking around with that kind of money in the Philippines or anywhere else. But anyway, on 50,000 pesos, if we use the exchange rate of 58, I think we get, let's see, what would it be? I guess I'd have to calculate real quick. So let's go 50,000 divided by 58. It's just that simple. Yeah, it's $862. So that's the equivalency there, just to kind of give you a frame of reference, right? All right, I'm going to show you this next part here. So let's keep going.
If you are carrying items more than personal use, or you're carrying this for commercial quantities, you have to declare that. You'll have to pay taxes if you're selling. Anyways, Filipino residents, balikbayans, you guys may avail of duty and tax-free privilege ranging from 150,000 pesos to 350,000 pesos. So depending on how long you've stayed outside the country. The longer, the bigger your duty and tax-free privilege is. While for foreigners and everyone, if your item is 10,000 pesos or less, you will not need to pay any taxes. So just my advice, bring items within the limits of your personal use. eTravel, again, who must register all travelers, children, adults, everyone. When you leave the Philippines, when you exit, only Philippine passport holders need to register. How to register? You can either go to etravel.gov.ph or download eGov.ph app. I've tried both, and I can say the website is way easier. It's more straightforward.
A couple of things here. It is easier to do it on the website than the app. The app is workable. You can download it from the iPhone, the Apple Store for your iPhone, or your Google Play for Android. So you can do it that way. You can access the website for it also. And just like Terry said here, that's an easier way to do it. What I want to tell you is the last time that I came into the Philippines, they had implemented the system, and I didn't know about the eTravel app and all that till I landed. I was wondering why they didn't pass out that typical form that you would do. And so I had to quickly find the website, fill in my information while I was in line, and then it automatically goes to the customs officer. So by the time you get to the customs officer, they have all your information, so it speeds up your processing. But this is a new system. It's very common in most countries. I know I have to do something similar when I go into China for business or Hong Kong. They're getting more sophisticated on their people tracking coming in and out, and that's also created some problems for people that have records. So just understand that there's collaboration between the US and the Philippines. So if you have a record in the US, it's likely you're going to be detained and possibly deported. Okay, let's move on to what she has to say about the terminals. I think this is interesting. We're talking about the Manila airport. There's a new operator and they have plans to, well, let's hopefully simplify things. Okay, let's see what she says.
NNIC, or the private operator, has also initiated plans to reassign terminals in the first quarter of 2025. That hasn't happened yet. So currently this is the assignments. In Terminal 1, you have Philippine Airlines international flights and a few foreign airlines. And then on Terminal 2 are all domestic flights of Philippine Airlines, Cebu Pacific, AirAsia, and other smaller airlines. So let's say if you were traveling with Philippine Airlines Los Angeles to Manila, you'd land on Terminal 1. And then your domestic flight would be in Terminal 2, so you'll have to change. But don't worry, Philippine Airlines have their own dedicated shuttle bus to transfer you. While in Terminal 3 are international flights and some domestic flights of Cebu Pacific. So the private operator's plan is to make Terminal 3 purely international. So their plan is to move Cebu Pacific domestic flights to Terminal 2. So Terminal 1, international flights. Terminal 2, domestic flights. Terminal 3, international flights. That's their plan.
Let's pause for a moment because this is important to me at least. So if any of you have traveled to the Philippines and you've gone through Manila, you know it can be a difficult time changing planes. It may not be in the same terminal. I've had this happen to me several times. So I just want to weigh in here. If you're coming for the first time to the Philippines and you're planning to transit to another location, a different airport other than Manila, do yourself a favor and fly into Cebu City instead. The Cebu airport is very modern, it's much smaller, it's easy to navigate, easy to connect to the next set of flights that you have to do domestically. So if you've never been to the Philippines before and you're planning on going to Dumaguete, Bohol, Iloilo, Mindanao, any of those other areas, Davao and Mindanao, you're not planning to go to the Manila area, then I would fly into Cebu City. Now here's number 2. I'm not so sure about this plan they're coming up with here. They're trying to move Cebu Pacific, which is the discount airline, over into the domestic Terminal 2 only. And the reason why I don't like that is right now there's international flights that can arrive in Terminal 3. It seems to me I usually am in Terminal 1. That's where most of the international flights are. But if they move everything domestically to Terminal 2, here's the problem. If you don't book it on the exact same airline, let's say you book Los Angeles or New York directly to Manila on Philippines Airlines, and then you wanted to save money and you're flying into Manila and you then have your next ticket on either Asia Air or Cebu Pacific. Those would be the primary 2 carriers. They are probably located in Terminal 2. And I've had it where I've had to go from Terminal 1 to Terminal 2. I've had 4 hours as a layover thinking that's plenty of time and barely made it. And the issue is more that the terminals aren't that close to each other, so you have to rent a cab and then take that to the next terminal. And then when you get to the next terminal, let's say Terminal 2 for the domestic flights, there's 3 primary terminals right now. They're going to build a 4th soon, and it'll be done in about 5 years or so. The problem is you have to come back into the airport, and there's always a massive line to get through the front end of security where you go through the x-ray machine with your baggage before you can enter into the terminal. I've had this happen twice to me now, where the only reason why I made the flight is I made a tough choice that I did not want to make. But seeing the line, and literally there was about 100 people with their luggage, and it moves very, very slow. It's not like our airports in the US that they move through relatively quickly. Not as fast as we'd all like, but relatively quickly. Now this is like wait, wait, and wait. So there was a police officer that worked for the airport security that was standing near the kind of security area where the x-ray machine was. And so I showed him my ticket and I said, I got to make this flight. I don't want to miss it here. And he then scratched at the paper. And what I learned was that what he was looking for was about a $20 bill US. And if you give him that $20 bill US, he'll take you right to the front of the line. So, not saying I would want to do this, but in order to make flights twice, I've had to do it. And that's just the Philippines. It is what it is. Don't judge me. But I would have missed the flight. And then, you miss the flight there, it's kind of luck of the draw. You might be waiting 6, 12, 18 hours for the next flight. So anyway, I've had to do it twice. So listen to what I'm saying. If you're going to come in on the same airline, it's probably going to be Philippine Airlines for the most part. Now remember, when you're traveling international in the Philippines, they charge you for weight on your baggage. If you bring extra stuff, you're going to get charged for it at the airport. So just keep that all in mind. If you're going to Manila, that's fine. But don't try to connect planes in Manila to someplace else. That's usually a problem, unless it's on the same airline in the same terminal, and you can confirm that when you buy the ticket. All right, let's see what else she has to say.
Apart from terminal reassignments, what are there to look forward to, Jennifer? So there is a plan as well to make a new terminal in NAIA. According to the NNIC, the private operator, in 5 years, so about 2029, a major upgrade of a new terminal is planned. This is expected to double the capacity of NAIA. Summary: if you're a foreign tourist watching, what do you need to enter the Philippines? Your passport needs to be at least 6 months valid. Your return or onward ticket, which, may be required, may not be required. According to law, it is required. If you actually look at the law, it's stated there. But anyways, some airlines will require that you have an onward or exit ticket. Some don't. Meanwhile, the Philippine immigration, they may ask, when are you leaving? You could just say, I plan on extending. And they're happy to answer, to accept that. Just be respectful. Remember, if you are a national of any of these countries, you must have a visa before flying to the Philippines. Example, if you're an Indian national, if you're Taiwanese, you're Chinese, you're Iranian, you're Egyptian, you're Albanian, if you hold passports of these countries, you must have a visa before flying to the Philippines. Everyone else, you can come here, visa upon arrival for 30 days, majority of you.
Basically, if you're coming from an English-speaking Western country, US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, no issues. You've got 30 days that you can go there visa-free. And like Terry said here, who's this travel expert that I kind of track and see what she's up to, because she watches the travel market for us. Like she said, it's pretty easy to extend it if you tell them that. So you're supposed to have a onward ticket going, return ticket basically, or on to another country before you enter the Philippines per law. What she's saying is depends upon which airline, whether they enforce that or not. And if you get into trouble on that, just say, well, I'm planning to extend it a little bit longer in the Philippines. And as long as you tell that to immigration, you're okay. All right, so anyway, I just want to make that point. Also, most European countries, same thing. It's not a problem to stay there for 30 days. That's one of the nice things about coming to the Philippines. And of course, the vast majority, not everybody, but a lot of the people, especially the younger ones, speak English. And now it's time for the video of the week. The video of the week is where I've gone through so many videos this week putting together the expat news, and I've come across something that I find really interesting or entertaining, and I thought the information was worth sharing with you. And what I typically do is just slice out a segment of that video, or I just do a summarized version of it. In this case, it's coming from Mike from Mike's Philippine Retirement, and I think he's got some interesting comments that I would say make a lot of sense. I would listen to this because I've experienced some of this myself. So let's take a listen to see what Mike has to say.
How family expectations here in Philippines can be a big challenge. I've known a lot of guys who've come here to the Philippines. They have an LDR or a girlfriend or even a wife that they bring with them here to the Philippines, or later on they meet a girl that The family destroys their life. They get involved with the wrong family. And we've all heard the horror stories and the nightmares of a family that takes advantage of the expat that comes here, takes advantage of the good nature and the good heart of a foreigner when he arrives to the Philippines. This is something that can derail your retirement. This is something that could sour your want to live overseas, because it's a nonstop hassle that everywhere you turn, everywhere you go, the family is after you for something. And I'm talking about you guys that move in with the family. I'm not talking about you guys who live in Cebu and the girl comes and stays with you, but you move in with the family. And all of a sudden, you're it. You're the cash cow. They've hit the lottery with you. And you're giving everything because you have a good heart. You want to take care of everybody. And when you decide to go with your wife or your girlfriend into town to go get dinner or coffee or lunch or whatever you're going to do, go for a long walk, the family wants to come with you. They're always tagging along. If you have a pickup truck or you have a car, they get in the back of the pickup truck. They jump in, and where you go for lunch, they all assume that you're going to buy all of them lunch. And maybe the first time that's cool, the second time it's fun, third time it's getting old, and the fourth time it's downright just unbearable. But what can you do? You're living with these people. And the expectation that the family has is a lot of it is your fault. You didn't set the ground rules. You didn't set any boundaries or parameters. You came in there, got off the plane with gifts and happiness and joy for the family. You brought, 20 pounds of chocolate candy, and you brought new clothes for people. You bought new electronics. You brought phones. You got a laptop for the family. You get up there, they need a new refrigerator. You get them a refrigerator. They need a new stove. You buy a stove. You're buying the gas. And the first electric bill comes in. You say, oh, I'll take care of that. It's only $60. It's only $80. Well, next thing you know, the next month comes in, and they're no longer showing you the bill like, oh, this is our electric bill. They're giving it to you like they expect you to pay for it. And the family is what can drive you crazy here. Now, if you get a good family, and most of us that come here do get great families, our wives and our girlfriends come from a sound traditional family, a family with values, a family with good work ethics. But some people get involved with the wrong family at the wrong time, or the family gets misled that you're going to pay for everything. They think that's what you're there for. You're their lottery ticket, with monthly payments. Every month there's something coming out. Now, as I said, you need to set boundaries. Boundaries could be, you tell your girlfriend, hey, we're going to give, 3,000 pesos a month to your family, and that's it. If you're living in their house on their property, maybe you pay a little bit more. But I'm going to tell you guys, you're better off for the first year or 2 years getting a place of your own for you and your girlfriend. Don't live with the family, because they're going to be a constant source of drainage of your bank account. You're the ATM. I really don't like that term, walking ATM, but that's what you will become if you're with the family every day. Today, it's the mother needs some help. Tomorrow, it's a brother. The next day, it's a cousin. And after that, it's a distance cousin. Somebody you never seen before shows up with a sob story that they give to your wife or your girlfriend, and they're looking for you to pay for it. That is the tough one. You need to break the ties with the family on a financial basis. Help when it needs help. Give when they need to be given to. Loan, don't loan. Give. But get away, and don't do it every day. It's not your job to buy them lunch and dinner every day. It's not your job to buy a new pig every day. It's not your job to buy chicken every day. Buy the rice every day. Fill the gas tanks up. Pay the electric bill. That's just a burden you put on yourself that you're slowly going to regret. When you first get here, yeah, that's cool. I got all this new family. I got all these new friends. But really, they're just looking at you like a big dollar sign. Maybe some of them are looking at you like a sucker at the end of a stick. So family life, the expectations of the family, you're thinking you're walking into a loving, nurturing environment, where they'll accept you as a new member to the family, but they're looking at you as, my God, BDO main branch has moved in here. We have a banker right here on the grounds, and the loans are not loans, they're gifts. Don't ever restock a sorry store.
Let's finish up this week with the Expat Lightning Round. The lightning round is where I give you some quick highlights of expats and expat bloggers in the Philippines that either was interesting or funny or something that happened that I thought you'd find interesting. Let's take a look at the information this week.
No, I was saying, Leah Mayer, your outfit for Christmas is super cute. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, maybe cute is not the word. It was like, there's a little bit sexy.
I was not complaining.
Like, okay, Leah Mayer, I see you, girl.
I'll
I
just
bet. And then, like, she had the whole back out. I was like, yes, girl, get it.
be flashing it up on the screen now.
So just pause for a second. This is a funny moment from the Leah and Blair slog. And you know, everybody else calls their videos that they do a vlog, VLOG. This is a slog, which is just a term that means it's much longer and kind of technically means more boring, but their channel is anything but boring. They connect people together that have lost connection with their loved ones and perhaps they never have even met before. For example, if they were stationed in the 60s or early 70s in Subic Bay or Clark Air Force Base, let's say you're U.S. military personnel, and maybe you were out on the weekend and having a good time, and maybe you didn't know it, but you fathered a child. That child has grown up without you. They now are searching for you, and people come to Leah and Blair, and then they basically put out information, news bulletins on Facebook to see if anybody knows who that man was, or more information on your family and your mother, that type of thing. And then they take the leads and try to connect it. And then once they get that far, they start using Ancestry.com and a genealogist. And they hunt all this down and they put it together. And then they often find the loved one either back in the States or sometimes even someplace else in the Philippines or whatever country that they came from. And they're able to connect them. Sometimes they've already passed. Sometimes they're still around. The ones that they used to do from the Korean War, that group is pretty much timed out now because that puts them into their 90s. But the Vietnam War is still very active, and it's an incredible and moving vlog that these guys do that they call their Leah and Blair slog. But this is a very cute moment at Christmas, and I just thought you guys would get a kick out of it. So let's watch the rest of it.
And this is why we got so many kids, okay, Leah May?
Yeah, true.
Those damn Filipinos are hot.
I know, right?
My final video here in Dumaguete. I'm at the Henry Resort. This has been the home of many of my vlogs for the last few years now. That and poolside of my house. When you watch this video, I'll already be gone. Guys, so as many of you know, I lived here in Dumaguete now twice. In fact, I've lived in Davao twice, in Cebu twice. Different locations every time for all of those cities. But Dumaguete, the first time around, I kind of got locked down here. I arrived, I want to say around October of like 2019, and then I was hanging out. I was having a good time, but I was actually ready to move on. I was actually going to be moving to Malaysia at that time. My channel was not even really profitable at that point, and I was still teaching English. And I was going to be moving to Malaysia and teaching English. Well, boom, pandemic started. And I ended up getting to a relationship, as my longtime viewers know, and I call that kind of a pandemic relationship. We were kind of a couple of situations. We were kind of brought together, and we really weren't going to really do anything more than date, but pandemic happened, and next thing you know, we're in a relationship for a year. Pandemic started to lift, and I decided to move on. Second time around, after I had lived in various places, Davao, Cebu, came back here, and again, just kind of visiting friends. Dumaguete was never, ever really my favorite place to live for various reasons. And this time I met Maya, and of course, Maya became my wife and ended up staying here. But as far as Dumaguete, for a lot of people, Dumaguete is going to check a lot of boxes. Dumaguete has, if you want to be up in cooler weather, you got the mountains of Valencia. If you want to kind of the beach lifestyle, you got Darwin. If you want a little bit of a city life, kind of more metropolitan, you got, within Dumaguete City. There is an airport. It does do Cebu, Manila, and now Iloilo flights. And it does have a ferry, which has various locations throughout the Philippines. Dapitan and Mindanao, Siquijor, Bohol, Cebu City, different ones. And you can even take a ferry directly across to go to South Cebu rather quickly. So as far as being central, it's very good. It's actually pretty well protected from things like natural disasters. You don't really get earthquakes here. You get some tremors from another earthquake that happened maybe over in Mindanao. It's not really affected too much by typhoons. It's pretty well protected. And so for a lot of people, Dumaguete can be great. I prefer to be in a place with less foreigners. I want condo life. I want more amenities. I want a more centralized hub where I can travel easier, even though Dumaguete is pretty good. And because of the amount of foreigners, I have noticed that the prices are increasing. When I first came to Dumaguete, you could get a decent place for $15K, $20K. Now, that does not get you a decent place at all. In fact, you got to be around the $30K mark. Now, there's guys out there that may comment and say, hey, I found a great place for 20 or 25. So there are still some places, but it's harder and harder. The really good places go very, very quickly. And so it's getting harder to find a place. It really is. And the prices have gone up because of the amount of foreigners.
So Gio's talking about Dumaguete and some of the positives, and then for him, some of the negatives. I think the one thing that I want to mention to you about Dumaguete, based upon my last trip there in September, and that is that if you go there, make sure you stay on the south side of town, on the Bacong, Darwin, or Sambuguita side of town. I call it kind of like the southern tip. It's kind of like the end of the tip of the island there on Negros. There's less traffic. That's where the beaches are and the dive resorts and things like that, and some of the nice resorts. If you can afford it, I would check out a resort called Pura Vida, Puravida. They just celebrated a 20-year anniversary, and it is a gorgeous location with great food, great accommodations, little pricey, but if you plan ahead, you probably can pick it up between 100 and 120 per night. The other place to stay, if you want to be more in Dumaguete area downtown, if you can afford it, it's a pricey option, but the nicest place is the Henry. And that's exactly where Gio is taking this video from. In fact, when Gio and I did a video in September together, and he interviewed me in my Expat challenge of jumping from city to city, trying to figure out where to live in the future in the Philippines, we did it right there at the Henry. And the reason is that the Henry has got a pretty area and a large space that kind of reduces the noise level, which is really high in Dumaguete. So if you can afford it, I mean, I looked at, I wanted to stay there, but it was running almost like $180 a night, $200 a night, which is a fortune in the Philippines. You should be able to get really nice accommodations around $100. But anyway, that's another place to check out because the Henry has 6 different restaurants. Now, here's the thing. In order to save money this last trip, instead of me staying on the south part of town near Darwin and all of that, near the beach, I actually went just north of the Dumaguete Boulevard downtown, just north of the North Point area, which is where the Henry is, right? So that's kind of the end of the Dumaguete Boulevard where the restaurants are and coffee shops and things like that before you head towards the airport. So there was a hotel called Unwind, which was actually fine from a hotel standpoint, a little bit different. It was a very kind of artsy type place from the decor standpoint, but the staff was very friendly. The rooms were quite large, actually, and the food was okay at the resort. So, but the problem was this. I was staying between North Point, which is like north of downtown Dumaguete, and the airport. And they have the national highway going through there, and there is so much traffic. I can't emphasize this enough because I had paid for that in advance for a week. So I stayed at the hotel. And again, the staff were fine. Nothing wrong with the Unwind Hotels. It's a chain. And it was a pretty good option. It has a pool and all of that, which you want. It's hot there all the time and humid, right? So if you haven't been, just be prepared for that. It's not like Hawaii hot. It's like baking Florida sun in Miami hot in the middle of the day. It's like that all the time. So that's like, would be summertime in Miami. Anyway, what I didn't know is that between the airport and North Dumaguete downtown, there are 3 universities. So you have the traffic coming in for that. You have quite a bit of population in the Cibulon area. It was actually where Maya's family, I think, is from, or at least that's where Gio and Maya were living. And you know, you have a combination of the trucks coming off the ferries that deliver the goods throughout the Philippines. They go from city to city and back on a ferry and back across. You have a lot of cars now that you didn't used to have. So it used to be that there weren't a lot of cars, especially with Filipinos, but they've changed kind of the way that they finance cars now. And so a lot of people that before couldn't afford a car now drive cars, and the city of Dumaguete wasn't set up for that. So you have that factor. You have a ton of scooters, motorcycles, trikes, and you put it all together and it's stop and go traffic for, oh gosh, miles and miles coming in from north of the city to downtown. And it really was something that affected my experience in Dumaguete to the point that the next time I go, I'm either going to try to get the Henry ahead of time at a discount, I hope, or I'm going to go back down towards Darwin and either stay at Pure Vita or Mike's Dive Resort, or there's a couple others. Anyway, most of the restaurants that you're going to want to eat at, as far as the city go, are downtown Dumaguete near the boulevard within proximity. The Why Not is in that area. There's the Casablanca, which is pretty good also. And then in North Point, there's a good Italian restaurant. I think it's called Baha'i. Anyway, there's several good restaurants. I should do a separate video on just that so people know where to go. But don't stay on the north part of the city. It just ruined the experience for me because every time I get on the scooter, I'm in stop and go traffic where you're literally having to put your foot down and you're on the highway. And it's just hectic. Then you have to turn left at some point because you're north of the city to get down to North Point and to the boulevard. And so you got to cross all that traffic. It just was not a fun thing to do. So do yourself a favor, stay on the south side of the city near Darwin or downtown Dumaguete where you're already there.
I'm not fleeing from Dumaguete because of the Maya breakup. In fact, we're on good terms, as good of terms as you can be for, ending it. But I really just want to be somewhere better, better for me. Again, there's a lot of people who will still like Dumaguete. Some people find comfort in large groups of foreigners because they can create friendships and different things. And it is harder when you go off on your own to a city where it doesn't really have a lot of foreigners. And you got to try to make friends with, and there's really, you barely see them. So it can be hard. And a lot of people, again, like I said, they find comfort in going to a place with a lot of foreigners where they can really kind of connect with different people. And it is good for that. But for me, I like to be kind of away from foreigners. Not to say when expats reach out and they say, hey, Gio, I've watched your channel. You want to grab a cup of coffee? I'm always usually more than willing, as long as I have the time for it. On a day-to-day basis, just loads of foreigners. I prefer to kind of live in a city where I am a bit more unique. I don't even know if that's the right word, not unique, but they don't judge us as a whole. Sometimes in Dumaguete, I feel like they kind of judge you get the bad deeds of some foreigners and they kind of judge us all. They clump us all together and judge us all like from the actions of some bad apples. And I feel like when you go into a city where there's not many foreigners, you're really judged more independently. And so that's one thing that I do like. So again, last video from Dumaguete, guys. The next videos you will see will be in my new location coming up in just a few days, guys. I know a lot of people speculated, most are wrong about where I'm going to end up. Some are right. I did give a hint about the 4 places that it's going to be: Cebu, Mactan, Newtown, Iloilo, Bacolod, or Davao. That's what I narrowed it down to. So thank you, guys. This is it from Dumaguete. And I really don't even see myself really visiting, to be honest. I don't want to say never because I might. But anyway, thanks, guys, for watching. Thanks for being part of my community. Over this ordeal going on with me, I've seen a big increase in views and watch time, subscriber count, everything. So I really appreciate people kind of supporting me and following me on my continued journeys here in the Philippines.
Point here, Gio says something really interesting that I want us to pay attention to. He's going to come up on a point about Maya. And there's been some discussion around why did they decide to call it quits after just over a year of marriage. And I think this is the first time that Gio has really shared what he's going to share. So pay attention because there's a little insight onto this. Here we go.
It'll be as a single guy. I think I've pretty much told myself that marriage is just not for me. And I probably would say it's probably more me. I just discovered a lot about myself that I'm not really, I don't know if I'm really a relationship type guy. I'm just probably not. I'll end it with that. Thank you, guys. I'll see everyone soon from a new location. Ciao.
All right, so interesting comment there from Gio, that he's not probably a relationship type guy and that it's probably more him. So I'm not sure why he feels that way, if it's that marriage cramps his style. You know, there's this big transition you go through from losing your freedom. Like you went to the gym whenever you wanted to when you were single, and now when you're married, you're like, I'm going to the gym now, and then you kind of wait to hear if there's any feedback. So I don't know if it's that, but anyway, I find it very telling because on their last video on the collaboration, the last one that they said they would do, Maya teared up at the end. And I know women process emotion differently than guys. We are more about what we think, and the women are more about how they feel. And so it's different. But I found it a little bit telling. It's just a very unusual situation since they've clearly stated that there's been no significant traumatic event like an affair or anything like that, that they just decided to depart ways. And I think Gio's admitting here that it's mostly him. I don't know. That's how I read it. I'd be curious what your read on it is. It's really hard when you're so public. The other thing you do is question, criticize. You can't breathe without someone saying, I didn't like the way he took that breath. So it's just part of being, on YouTube, I'm the public eye, and everyone's trying to figure this out. So, what was the actual reason of them splitting? It just, again, it's not our business. But it's a little chismis. Chismis in Tagalog means gossip. And, but I'm just more curious because I don't know, I just didn't see it coming. Anyway, I wish them both the best. They seem like both of them are good, decent people. I hope that they have much success in both their personal lives and professional lives moving forward. And, but I'm curious what your thoughts are. All right, well, that's it for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed what you saw here. This is a little different format than the typical weeks of Expat News. This format, I'm adding a little commentary here and there where it makes sense. Let me know if you felt it was enough or too much or just right or whatever the thought is. Please let me know whether you are a current subscriber or if you're new to the channel. It does make a difference on how you kind of view things. I'd like to know that. So when you give that feedback in the comments section here. That's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.